All right, Matt the Mortgage Guy, live, YouTube live every Monday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm excited that I've got one half of two guys' take on real estate. So we're going to get one guy's take on real estate, and he's going to bounce those off of me. I'm checking out online your YouTube channel, and you are Kevin the Property Prince. Is that right?
You can call me whatever you want, but that's exactly what I go by online. And yeah, you get the discount version of two guys' take on real estate today.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you just about real estate in general. Then we'll take some questions. As always, please post any questions, real estate related, mortgage related, market related, whatever comes to mind. As more and more people join, I'll look for some of those questions we can pluck out. I can ask your take on it, my take on it, but maybe give folks that are watching who are wondering who the Property Prince is, maybe your quick 2-minute origin story, what you and Matt have going on over there at YellowBrick.
Sure. So Matt and I started about 13 or so years ago, but it feels like 35. We started by buying just the most haunted, scary looking, rundown 2-family house we could find in the city of Springfield, Massachusetts. And we didn't know what we were doing. We jumped in. I like to say we leapt before we learned, and we jumped in with both feet. We bought the property, we fixed it up. We used hard money to do it. And we then basically went through the Burr method. Before, that's what they started calling it. And we got it rented out. We refinanced it, and we just kept on going. We've now, like I said, about 13 or so years later, got up to about a total of over that time of about 500 rental units, single families, multifamilies, larger buildings. We've done tons of flips, lots of wholesale deals. We've done a little bit of everything. And so now we've been trying to put ourselves out there a little bit and share some of our insight and share some of the struggles that we've overcome, so that people like your followers, they don't have to deal with some of the struggles that we've dealt with.
Right. Yeah. That's a great part of all the information that's available on the internet today is like, you can go out there and challenge whatever it is, whether it's real estate or whether it's, a new hobby or a sport, skip past some of the mistakes that others have made. And I love sharing, my stories with folks. I shared some stories about some war zones in Alabama where I bought properties, and it just wasn't the jam, things I would have done different had I done it again and whatnot. So
Right.
That's cool to hear. And I would imagine too, like, you've been buying real estate longer than I have. If you guys started buying in 9, 10, and 11, you guys were getting deep discounts. A lot of my listeners, myself included, wish we would have been buying back then. But you've seen different markets, right? Back then when it was probably, not a lot of buyers, right? People were scared to death to buy stuff. Lending was even stricter and whatnot. And so there's been some changes. What would you say, I guess, is for some folks, and I think my investor followers feel like right now it's like, oh my gosh, interest rates are higher than I've seen them in the last few years. Property prices are higher than I've seen them. What are some good opportunities that you're seeing in this market, despite, like, I'm honest with people, right? Like, affordability is an issue, whether you're an owner or you're buying an investment property, like, it's more expensive, right? But where's the opportunity at in your guys' eyes?
Well, we're still buying, and we're just being very, very choosy and very selective, and learning, really still learning, even after we've been doing this a lot. As everything keeps changing, the game keeps changing. You have to change and adapt with it. So we've been learning more about how to analyze each deal and as it's presented to us. So if something comes our way, we're running numbers, over and over and over again with a fine tooth comb, to figure out if it really makes sense. I mean, just because the prices are up doesn't mean a deal won't still make money. I mean, so that's one of the things we've really been looking at, analyzing, finding deals, especially residential stuff. Even if we just looked at, Matt literally today was looking at a 5-family property. And, one of the things we were talking about is it's horribly under rented. And it's not horribly under rented for rents 8 or 10 years ago, but it's horribly under rented for rents today. So if they were to sell it, for whatever price they're looking to sell it for, a lot of people might not buy it because, man, you're not really making any money between high interest rate or higher interest rates than what we're used to. And, a higher sales price because the market's still really strong, at least in our area. They're like, wow, this doesn't make any money. In fact, if I bought this property, I'd lose money. Well, it's because you got to go through and you got to make some adjustments with the residential stuff. You got to rework leases. A lot of people have tenants that don't have leases, that are on a month to month. These deals don't make a lot of sense for people at the higher price points that are there today. So you got to figure out ways to run numbers and find if there is a value add. And a lot of people see value add as just renovating a property, and it could really be, restructuring tenancies, and that's a huge part of it.
Right. Yeah. And I think that I haven't been through a ton of it myself. I've naturally increased rents over time where it wasn't like, a Band-Aid needed to be ripped off. Right. But I know that I've heard from investor clients, let's say that you bought something that's got 2012 rents in place, and it's 12, they're getting the smoking deal of 1,200. I talk to these people because they when they want to become homeowners, I realize, like, man, you realize you're getting a smoking deal. Like, market rent is 2,000. So what do you do with that client where, you buy a property that's under rented, let's say it's $1,200 and market rent is 2,000. I'm interested in how you personally approach that.
Well, I'll tell you, I feel like I'm literally learning that as I'm going. And I just did some of that today. And every time I deal with it, almost like it's like the movie 50 First Dates, where you're doing it all over again for the first time. So I like to deal with this stuff in person with people, or verbally, not with a mailed notice or something coming from a sheriff or something that's going to, be like you said, a Band-Aid being ripped off. But and every time I do this, I have the conversation. It's almost fresh, and it's always a genuine conversation with me, because I 100% get that the last thing I want to do is give somebody a borderline heart attack, knock on their door, hey, listen, your rent's got to double, or get out. Yeah. I don't know, and the last thing I want to do is something like that. So I want to be very sensitive to it, understand what it'd be like to be in their shoes and be on the other side of that door, having that conversation with somebody you don't have a history with, you don't know from anybody, the new owner of the business or the building or the house or whatever. And, so say, listen, and I had that conversation. One of them today was, he's literally at about 50% of what his rent should be, comparably today. And I said, listen, so I haven't been able to I've been trying to reach out to you. I haven't been able to connect. My name's Kevin, yada, yada. Listen, I know you don't have a lease. We took over this property. You don't have a lease in place. You're just here on a, month-to-month basis. But you've been living here for a long time. So I wanted to find out and hear from you, what were your plans for the future? And kind of put some stuff back there out to them. On a rental property, they're renting. It's not usually a forever place. They're not going to necessarily expect to live there for 30 years. So listen, I know you don't have a lease in place. Is that because you were not really sure how long you were going to stay here? Or you do want to stay. Okay, interesting. So if you're looking to stay for a length of time, it sounds like maybe you'd be interested in talking about going over lease terms and coming up with a plan, that we can keep you here for a length of time. And as part of that conversation, you're trying to help them understand that, they are below market value, or if you were planning on leaving, and I had this was a phrase I used today. If you had moved out and I was going to move somebody else in, I'd probably be advertising this apartment at, $1,200, and I know you right now, I know you're renting it for $700. So, you're getting an amazing deal on it. But I'm just saying, if I was replacing, if you did leave, I'd be replacing you with somebody else at $1,200. Listen, I'd rather do business with you. You seem like a great person. Your apartment seems okay. It's nice, whatever, would you be willing to stay if I could keep you renting at below market pricing? So you're hitting them with a market price, a fair number, but you really should consider, for your own benefit, just a good business practice, giving them a discount from that to keep them there, and keep a long-term tenant happy. And it's easier pill to swallow for them if it's discounted.
Yeah, no, I totally get it too. And I think that I probably didn't even do it intentionally, but I've had below market rents where you're like, okay, I might be missing out on $150 a month on this unit or that unit, but less turnover, a tenant that's taking care of the property, all the other things that go with that, where you're like, okay, I can trade $1,800 a year in less rent, knowing that I'm not going to do a $2,000 turn, or I'm not going to deal with repairs that another tenant, I might have, or, somebody who's not paying. I'm in California where, it's pretty tenant friendly, right? Where somebody could trash the unit, not play for 3 months and all that good stuff.
That's not even abnormal around here. So I get that. But I'm with you. We do some TikTok videos too. You may remember me from some of those cringy videos that you've seen on TikTok. But that's exactly, we talk about that. Like, listen, if you have a vacancy, you have downtime while you're renovating, and you don't always have a contractor on standby to go in there and do renovation. And if it's an older tenancy, it's a 5-year tenancy. You're not going through there and you're not in and out of the unit in a weekend. You're hiring a contractor. They're doing decent work.
Right.
So you're spending thousands of dollars on that. And then you have the downtime while you're waiting for it to get finished. Then you start advertising, then you do showings, then you set up a move-in date for somebody. And maybe you're out a couple of months worth of vacancy. You're looking at several $1,000s worth of turnover associated costs. Why not discount that and keep somebody in place and keep somebody happy?
Yeah, for sure. I totally get it. So, I've been buying stuff for 13 years. You guys are personally holding over 500. Do you guys have a fund where you guys are collecting capital from other folks? Tell me a little bit about that. I'm just
we've restructured a bit over time, so we have maybe half of that these days. But at our peak, we did. We had another business partner at one point as well, and that person's no longer with us. So again, some restructuring over the years. But yeah, we basically have essentially a mortgage on it, on our portfolio, and we have some solid equity on it, and we're renting out and managing our own properties, where we actually created a management company to manage our own holdings, and we did that from basically the ground up also.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that's definitely going to land and resonate with a lot of people that follow the channel. I talked to a lot of buy and hold investors, right? And
awesome.
People that are slowly building a portfolio alongside their W-2 income, where it's pretty cool. In California, especially, it doesn't take a lot of properties to have a $5 million portfolio. For some people in some areas, it's like, I've got 6 properties that are worth $800,000 a piece, right? And so they've got $5 million in holdings after buying one every 2 years for 10 or 12 years. So that's really cool. I was going to ask you this question too, because I get this quite a lot and I don't know the answer to it. Obviously, as a residential mortgage broker, I'm helping people get up to 10 mortgages, and then Fannie and Freddie say, "Thanks for playing." 10 is your limit. So you talked about having like some sort of blanket loan on your portfolio. Is that a relationship you guys built over time, or where did that stem from?
Yeah, so I'm slightly fuzzy on this because it was actually a little bit more my business partner that handled this than I. But we built good relationships with local banks. So we were working with some local banks for a while. And then when we did essentially some kind of refi, I guess we would call it, we went with a national lender that did everything as a portfolio loan.
Okay. Yeah. Which is pretty cool when you have more holdings, they just say, okay, portfolio total is worth 10 million. Right. We'll lend you 6 and whatnot. So
the real fun was getting into every single apartment to do an appraisal. Oh my God, I can't believe
they had to appraise every single unit.
We did. Yeah.
Holy cow. And so you've got like, you said it was 500 over time, but like you guys personally hold like over 200 right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Okay. So 200 appraisals.
Well, not necessarily 200 properties, but like some
Right.
multi-family house, but every single apartment in every multi-family house needed access to walk through the whole deal.
Yeah. I mean, even if it was 50 appraisals, if we're talking,
yeah, always a lot of appraisals,
25 or 30 grand, I'm doing the numbers in my head because I know that
huge.
$500-600 for an appraisal.
Yep.
If it's a rental property, it might need the rent survey too. So wow.
Yeah. Well, we think it was worth it. So
I'm sure. Yeah. Like when you're dealing with hundreds of units, that's pretty cool. I'm going to give a quick shout out to my buddy, Joey Garessi. He's watching us from Oklahoma City. Glad to have you on, Kev. Love hearing from other investors doing the work. Joey's an investor out in OKC. If you got any questions, Joey, feel free to ask.
Yeah, and if you're newer and growing, I'd love to see that and hear from people. I got to tell you, we did not know anything when we first started, and we're just a couple of regular guys that started investing.
Yeah, that's what I love too. Is you mentioned something about basically starting before you had a game plan or firing before you aimed. That is something that is everybody I talk to. A quick shout out for my new podcast, Get Better Every Day. But I'm talking to people that have had like high level success, and every single one of them had no idea what they were doing when they started. Right.
I hope you can see that about us pretty soon. I don't know.
Well, I think with a few hundred units, and starting a property management company, like a lot of people would consider that, high level success. And, you're the first to admit that you just got started. Anybody who talks to me about, rental real estate, if they talk to me about the mortgage business too, because I think I, help mentor folks in the mortgage business as well. Hey, Matt, I'm thinking about getting on YouTube. The most important thing is start. Right. Yeah. And one of my favorite sayings is you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Like Kev is an example of that, right? Like he admits that he just got started, didn't have a game plan and just put one foot in front of the other. And here you are, 13 years later, you and Matt have a successful buy and hold rental portfolio. You guys have the property management company. I'd be interested to hear on that because all the conversations I'm having where, I'm actively involved in investment real estate. My wife and I own 14 units. I'm having way more conversations than I am doing my personal deals. So it's like I'm living vicariously through all these investors. And one thing that's coming up a lot as properties get more expensive and the numbers start to get tighter is people start to think about self-managing. I think that as somebody who started a management company, you probably have some great insight into like some do's, some don'ts about self-managing and some advice around that. What would you tell people that are considering that with their first investments?
100%. I would say, if you're like a lot of people that are starting off with, grabbing your first multifamily, like a 3-family house, that seems to be the most common, or maybe house hacking where you live in one unit, you rent the others out. I would definitely think that doing some self-management would be an awesome value. I'm going to screw up the phrase, I'm sure, but it's the little bit of knowledge does a lot of damage kind of a thing. So make sure you learn and be a little bit humble in what you do know or think you know about managing your own properties, because I've watched people make some real colossal, train wrecks out there by being too stubborn of a landlord, too demanding, too, thinking they're the ones that are, they're always in the right, or a little too confident. But there's so much resources now. And that's why we created our channel is to help kind of steer people away from the mistakes that we've made in this type of thing. And management software is so available these days as well. I mean, you could have management software that lets you track, and keep everything organized. So photos, leases, all your paperwork, any notices you send to people. It's just huge what you can do off of your own little desktop computer or a phone. And, and it's also very doable. If you start off with a decent tenant screening process, and you get yourself your first property filled with just some okay tenants, just as long as you're avoiding the train wreck, the really bad ones, that's probably your best way to get going is, make sure you do an okay job of putting some decent folks in there, and then just being present, not ignoring their calls, not ignoring them, and just thinking of them as a paycheck. Be an honest landlord about everything too. I think it's going to be a great opportunity for folks. Because like you said, that's a great way to save. What is it, about 10% that everybody budgets for property management?
Yeah, 8 to 10%. Yeah, and that's great advice too. I think even those who have aspirations of, building a large portfolio that'll eventually be managed by self-managing the first couple, I think you learn some of the lessons and you know what to look for, what you want in a property management company. Because some people just don't know, right? And they just, they might have a bad management company, but they don't know any better because they've never done it themselves.
Right.
And so, bad screening process, they don't have systems in place to collect the rent and whatever the case may be, right? You don't know what you don't know. And, right. I've personally had a mix, some self-managed, some stuff that's not necessarily close enough to me where I'd feel comfortable with it, where I'm more than happy to pay the 8%, right? Because they're dealing with multifamily where there's higher turnover and things that I personally don't want to deal with. Corey Brunson made a comment, which I think we both agree with, self-management forces new investors to gain in-field experience.
I think that's fair. I mean, I don't know that, I don't love the word forces because I don't think it should be like a forced thing, like it's a bad thing or it's a penalty, but it does. And I think it's a great thing that people get in-field experience. Sure.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the YouTube channel, so I'm going to I put it in the comments, guys. 2 guys take on real estate. Cool YouTube channel with a bunch of, on-field experience, right? Of what you guys have done and things to avoid and, tips to buy below market price, all kinds of good stuff on there. You mentioned TikTok. Is if I search 2 guys take on real estate on TikTok, is that where we find you?
Oh yeah. It's the same name on all of our socials, but we've got almost 1 million people on TikTok following us now. And
oh, sweet.
It's and I get recognized at Costco. I go out to dinner, and it's like now it's like I used to never know if I'm getting recognized by a tenant, maybe somebody like that's unhappy with me from our past or something, or now if I don't know if I'm like signing an autograph. I mean, I go to a foreclosure auction and somebody comes up, he's like, "Hey," and I'm like, I don't even try to remember people anymore. I'm like, I don't know if I know you or not, but hi, how are you? And
that's awesome. I gotta check out the TikTok stuff for sure. I know I came across the YouTube stuff, and it's good stuff, right? So I love chatting real estate and getting more people on here to help folks that are following. I'm trying to empower people through education on the real estate investing side. As a mortgage broker, it's just if people really truly understand the numbers, it's like the foundation for anything they want to do. Because I think a lot of times, people might see a TikTok video or they might see something where they're like, you know what? I keep hearing real estate's a great investment. I know it's a great investment. Then, the next step that folks need to take, and this is kind of, me getting on a soapbox real quick, is go out there and educate yourself. Like Kevin said, like information is out there, right? And you get to avoid all the mistakes that Kevin and Matt made along the way, hopefully, by watching them and them saying, hey, listen, don't do this, don't do that, you should do this. And then on the mortgage side, I always encourage folks to know their numbers, because at the core of a real estate deal is the numbers. And if you have an idea of what your goals are, what you're looking to do, some people want appreciation, some people want cash flow. Everyone's got different like timelines and objectives and goals. Get really clear on that stuff. And with anything else in life, once you have a plan in place, then you can start, chunking off towards the execution of that plan. So there's some people that tell me, hey, Matt, I really like my day job. It's really stress-free and it's cool. What I want to do is save up, buy a property every 4 years, and I'm going to buy 3 in the next 12. That, is going to allow me to, with an aggressive payment schedule, get those paid off within 30 years. And then in 30 years, when I'm 60, I'm going to have 3 paid off properties that are going to kick off $7,500 a month in cash flow. And I'm going to be able to travel and all my bills paid. That's one person's plan, but everyone's plan is different. So the more clear you are on what your plan is, what you're trying to do, the easier it is for, Kevin to give you advice, for me to help you with the mortgage structure and all the other things that go along with it. So I know we've got a few dozen people join. I'd love to see some questions pop up, because when you got a guy like Kevin who's done hundreds of deals over the last decade and a half, there's some knowledge in there. I want I want to pull it out.
I've had thousands of tenants, and I do my best. I think I do a really great job always keeping a smile on my face by repressing all my bad tenant memories. But after bad tenant stories, I'm sure I'll have a million of them for you.
I would love to hear, like, I hate to do this to you because you just talked about suppressing them, but maybe it's a good counseling session if I have you tell me, like, what's the worst one that comes to memory, tenant story wise, where I'm imagining that having, thousands of tenants over the years, there's some that have kept you up at night or really, caused some stress.
Well, I mean, I guess, boy, that doesn't narrow it down at all. I mean, there's always the classic bad tenants that don't pay their rent. That's like a regular Tuesday. We've had properties that have been hit by tornadoes, hit by a fire, that have flooded. We've had all sorts of, disastrous situations that tenants have dealt with. We've had tenants that were pharmaceutical dealers. We've had tenants that were, I don't know. I had the oldest profession, you might say.
I like how you dance around drug dealer.
I don't know if this is on YouTube or where this is all going to be. So you got to be careful. You never know.
Yeah.
We've had tenants that have been, boy, I'll say probably one of my worst ones. I see there's comments popping up. I don't want to talk too much over them. But one of my worst ones, we had a 2-family house in the city that we have most of our properties in, and one of the sons of the tenant was an adult woman. She had adult sons, and I guess one of the sons maybe went to jail and then got out of jail and came back home, and he was in I guess he was probably perceived in the neighborhood to be some kind of a snitch on a rival group of friends that participate in bad activities. And so that house became the target of drive-bys about 2 to 3 times a month. My multifamily house, that 2-family house, was being shot at. And that was really, really problematic for us for a lot of reasons. But basically, the upstairs neighbor was another family, and they actually got a bullet in their couch in their living room from this. So we started getting calls from the city. We started getting calls from the police department, various different like community resource officer type folks, and literally they were like upset with us and saying, you've got to get this property under control. What the heck is going on? And I said, well, leaky faucet me, yeah. Drive-bys you,
right.
And they were demanding that we evict this household that's getting shot at. And I get it. They're a bad household. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they are, but they're the victim of a drive-by. How am I supposed to go stand up in court? What kind of a jerk am I going to look like? I mean, how do I go? This person needs to lose their home because they almost got shot. This is crazy.
Wow.
But they really wanted me to be handling that law enforcement issue. So eventually the second floor tenant, of course, moved out because they were
shot at.
Yeah. And within a few days, while the apartment was being turned over, that apartment was set on fire. And it was definitely arson. So the house went up in flames. The first floor tenant got displaced because of the fire. So in our state, you're pretty much going to have to stick them in a hotel for a little while until, provide them with housing. Even though you didn't do anything wrong, you're now paying to house them somewhere. So this is in the month of June, I think, about halfway through June. They're in a hotel on my dime, and they haven't even paid me June's rent. So like they haven't paid to live in my home for June, and I'm paying to have them live in a hotel because their whole ridiculous activities led to my house being burned down and me losing a tenant and the house being burned down. So knowing that the court system here would probably make me give them another apartment, since they know that I'm going to have, a portfolio of properties, they'd be like, hey, listen, why don't you put them in another apartment? I offered them 3 different places, one of which was 2 streets away. And they didn't want to take me to places, saying that one of them, the one that was 2 streets away, was a bad neighborhood. You're the reason this is a bad neighborhood. Are you bad hidden camera? Long story short, we did end up, we told them, listen, we've offered you options. We paid for a hotel for a week for you. We can't afford to do this. You're not even a paying customer. So I guess we're done here. Good luck. And they of course immediately went running to court. The court insisted that the lack of a property doesn't end the tenancy. apparently.
Wow.
And
Even when you're not paying.
even when they're not
This
paying,
person, yeah.
yep. And so they basically they got really kind of nudged to take one of the ones we did offer them. So we offered them that apartment. It was on the fourth floor of a larger property, and they remained there for several years. And we just kind of kept dealing with them, being very, very. I mean, they're every year or so, there was another arrest. They're in the paper. The kid's got his mugshot in the paper and weapons charges and whatever it might be. And we just couldn't shake this household for a very long time.
Wow.
They're gone now, but it took us a while.
And hopefully that other property you had didn't get shot up.
It's since the fire, the new one, yes.
The new one, right? Yeah, I mean, because in my eyes, it's just like you want to look out for the greater good of everybody, right? You don't want someone on the third floor being in the middle of something that really has nothing to do with them. But
it's really hard when you don't have you're not even empowered to to say when you want to stop doing business with a customer. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, that sounds like some California type stuff too. I would have told the judge put him up at his house and
right.
Yeah, you got an open room, right, Judge?
I have to go back in front of that judge again the next week. So.
Yeah, I guess you got to play nice. Oh, that's awesome. That story did not disappoint. That might be a snippet. That might be a good one to pull out of there.
I'm glad I remember that one.
Corey Brunson. It makes me feel better about any tenant issues I've had. So thanks for making me feel better, Kev. Corey Brunson's asking, looking back, was there a mistake or false assumption you made earlier in your portfolio that makes you laugh now?
Oh man, laugh and shake my head probably every day about something. So that's a good question. Let me see. Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's probably the biggest one. And I hear this a lot. And maybe it's different from state to state, but in our area, the false assumption was that two things. Section 8 tenants are the worst tenants you can get, and Section 8 tenants, at least their rent will always be paid by the government. I would say both those two things, in my experience, a pretty significant experience in my area, are both, I would say, untrue. We've had more than our share of terrible tenants, Section 8 wise or non-Section 8 wise. People can still suck no matter who's paying the bills for them. And rent is not always guaranteed just because they're in a Section 8 program. And that's very, very unfortunate here because we've had Section 8 terminate tenancies, leaving their tenant, their client, leaving them in the apartment, kicking them off the program. And now we're stuck with somebody that couldn't pay full rent before, certainly isn't going to be able to pay full rent now. And we have to now go through a very ridiculously long eviction process.
Making me feel better about the California stuff. I made a YouTube video, kind of defending Section 8 tenants because I've had really good experiences, and at least in my experience with a property management company who was really well versed in Section 8 tenants because they had worked in like a Section 8 apartment building beforehand, setting the proper expectations and reminding some of these tenants like, hey, listen, your total rent is $675. You're paying $40.
Right.
And you're getting $635 in assistance. All we ask is that the front yard is clean, right? And you're going to continue this sweetheart deal. We don't want to have to turn you into the housing authority. We don't want to have to, go to them. But if you, continue to have 14 bikes out front, it might be something that we'd have to flag. So
we have a lot of that same thing. Unfortunately, the authorities here don't do much by the way of being an authority. They're basically just kind of, administrative. They're more like just, we paid our portion. I don't know if you have any problems with anybody, you just got to take them to court. And we're like, really?
Yeah. So their name is housing authority, but it's really,
they don't
without the authority part. Yeah.
And again, that may be a state by state, or it might just be our region, our area of this state, but that's been largely our experience here. I would think if you want to be enrolled in this program, the program should have pretty strict rules about participation. And, your enrollment in that program is clearly your option. It's optional. Nobody's forcing you into it. And, that means if you get caught having extra people living in the home that aren't supposed to be living there, that are able-bodied adults that could be supporting that household as well, then, you should have some kind of repercussions for that. But largely, there's not.
I think I've had some good and bad experiences. I'm thinking back to where it's like, I painted a rosy picture because I had good experiences. And then I think after I made the video, I had a Section 8 tenant who stopped paying electricity bill. So there's like no electricity. I think they stopped paying water. So there's no running water. Some things that probably didn't like attribute to keeping the property in great shape.
Right.
But anyhow, it was more good than bad. So I'm still bullish on Section 8. I still like them.
Oh, for sure. No, for sure.
Corey Brunson's got another one about are there any unique red flags you look for during tenant selection, which I think is, the perfect person to ask, somebody who's running property and management. And I think property managers in general are trying to do good tenant selection.
Yeah.
When you own the properties behind your property management company, I'm sure you're doing extra due diligence.
Yeah, no, that is great. And I'm not sure, but I think we did just record a YouTube video for this. If it didn't get posted, it's probably coming up. So hopefully, Corey, you'll find us, maybe be a subscriber with us and check that out. But it was literally all about red flags. And I'll tell you, I'll give you two quick ones. So one of them is going to be, when somebody gives you a current landlord reference and you check that reference, that can be a huge kind of a miscue or mistake people make, because people will be checking that current landlord reference. And I'll tell you, I've fallen for this, learning my way through this multiple times. I made this mistake, and I talked to that landlord, and he's like, "Oh, Stacy wants to move. Oh gosh, she was just the best tenant ever. I don't know what we're ever gonna do without her. She's like family to us. She pays on time. She pays extra. She bakes us cookies. I'm gonna hate to see her go." Meanwhile, he hangs up the phone. He's like, "Honey, Stacy's moving the hell out. I can't wait to get that dirtbag out of my apartment." They will do anything. Sometimes some bad landlords they'll do anything to get that person a good reference to get them out of their lives.
Right.
Don't fall for the current landlord talking too good about an existing tenant. The real gem is to find the landlord before their current landlord, because they don't have any reason to have any bias. So if you can,
that makes a lot of sense, right? It's like, if they're a great tenant, you say they're crappy because you don't want them to leave.
Right.
If they're a crappy tenant, you say they're amazing because you want them to get back on and be somebody else's problem.
I always give I tell people I give them an honest landlord reference, even if they're terrible and I can't wait to see them go. I will never pawn that off on somebody else. I can probably deal with them better than the next landlord could if he had to deal with them. So I'd rather endure it, than make somebody else have to do it and see them get walked all over. But red flag wise, I would say somebody that's very disrespectful about your time. So if you're looking at tenant selection, right, they're interacting with you probably in a couple of different ways. They're interacting with you maybe by phone or by email to talk about the apartment, to fill out an application. So if you're asking them for documentation, you're asking them for a down payment, and it's taking them a long time, or they don't do what they say they're going to do, or they don't meet a certain deadline, that's a red flag. If you schedule a showing with them and you're going to show them an apartment at 10 a.m. on a Friday, and 10 a.m. shows up and they're not there, and it's 10:05 and they're still not there, and then at 10:07 you check your email and they say, "Oh gosh, something came up," those kind of things. If they no call, no show, just like an employee, that might be a huge red flag for you. If they're late, and then if you're doing a showing with them and walk them through an apartment, what kind of interaction? I mean, are they friendly? I mean, it's like, think of it like a first date, right? Everybody's kind of putting their best self out there for you, and if you're not loving what you're already seeing, it's probably only going to get worse. It's not going to get that much better, generally speaking. So I would say if you're getting kind of rubbed the wrong way, you feel like they're not really trying very hard, or not respectful of your time, that's a good indication that things are probably not going to be great a couple of years down the road.
Yeah, I agree. If you're not getting along during the honeymoon period, you're probably not going to get along in years 2, 3, 5, and 10 of this marriage, because ultimately, it's a relationship you're entering into with a tenant, whether you like it or not, because you're going to be providing housing and they're going to be expected to pay on time. All right, we got some more questions rolling in, which I like. Keep the questions coming, folks. I know Kevin's time is valuable, so I think we got about another 20 minutes. We'll be live for about an hour, and we'll see how much we can pull out of that brain. 13 years of real estate investing. All right, Jason Garcia, can you briefly go over the before you rent your home checklist, trying to proactively get my property renter proof?
Absolutely. So That's a great question. It's going to be a little bit different depending on what kind of home you're renting out. I'll tell you, we do a few things that may be cringy and shocking to some people that other people like might not do, but in our multifamilies, and if you picture a traditional multifamily house, like a first, second, third floor, 3-family house, it's got a basement, right? And most of the time, in a lot of rental properties, and again, all different places all across the country, but most of the time in rental properties like that, there's a basement that is kind of a common area. You've got your water heaters, your heating systems, your circuit breakers, your washer and dryer hookups, maybe in the basement. And one of the things we don't do is we don't allow our tenants to have access to the basement at all. And this is where sometimes I duck because people are like, what the hell's, what's wrong with you? What kind of a jerk landlord are you? And again, I think it depends a little bit on maybe the type of rental you're doing and maybe a little location and the class of and style of rental you're doing. But there's a lot of liability going on in an owner's basement. It's not exactly the most kid-friendly and safe place. There's a lot of shared, very expensive equipment down there that's also very dangerous. So I don't know if when you have the first floor and the third floor people having a dispute, you really want that third floor guy going down there with a wrench and tinkering with the first floor dude's heating system. Maybe he decides to get a little revenge and shut their heat off on him. I've seen tenants turn up their hot water tanks because they want more hot water. They want their showers to last longer. And that's not how hot water tanks work. It's 40 gallons, 40 gallons. But what it does do is it makes the hot water exceed the temperatures that are set. And if you ever get inspected or God forbid somebody actually gets burned, you're the one at fault because the landlord's hot water tank burned their kid. I've seen people go into basements and I've seen people steal power from their neighbor. I've seen people tap in other people's hot water supply and steal hot water from their neighbor. I've seen people wedge circuit breakers open because, gosh darn it, they don't want to be inconvenienced every time they almost burn the place down by overloading their circuit. They're going down and having to flip a switch.
They wedge it open. Hey, I was going to intervene real quick. Jason said he's looking for tips on renting bigger homes. He's got a big 4,100 square foot, 2,000 built in Houston, Texas.
Yeah. Okay.
What would you say about something like that?
So it sounds like probably a pretty nice place. My thing would be getting it renter proof would be getting things in a decent shape of repair. And then really your renter proof aspect should be setting expectations and getting a good lease together that has a great way to define who's responsible for what when it comes to the property and then how things get resolved. So I would probably focus on something like that where you probably have people that are, if they're going to rent that and probably can afford to rent something like that, they're probably pretty competent or pretty capable of managing a household. So, but you want to make sure that everybody understands, hey, listen, who's responsible for the lawn care? I mean, I've taken over properties that were managed by somebody, by owners. They moved tenants in and winter hit and nobody picked up a shovel. Nobody told anybody everybody was surprised that they were responsible for snow removal. And 100%, these kind of things definitely need to get defined. I'll tell you, one of the biggest problems with higher end rentals like that, what it sounds like, is people not being on the same page at the beginning.
Yeah, I would agree too. And something I was going to add to that, because I've got single families that aren't that big in California, but are on the bigger side where, you've got really competent tenants that are easy to manage for the most part, where it's like, I can get a Venmo for $2,500. And, one thing that's important, and to your point of like getting on the same page and setting expectations, is like, hey, if there's an issue, I'd like to know. This is a property that I'm going to own when you're gone, right? Yeah. And so like in that size house, what comes to mind for me is like, if they don't want to call you or contact you or upset you because there's a water leak and they let this thing go on for 6 months or 9 months, and now you got $40,000 in water damage. Yeah, that's bad, right? So like to your point, Kev, like I think Jason, what you want to do is get the lease in place, like Kevin talked about. You're responsible for this, I'm responsible for that. And I think be really clear about like you want to be contacted in the case of X, Y, and Z, because a lot of folks, they're renting this big, huge house, and maybe in their head they're like, oh, I don't want to inconvenience the landlord. I won't tell them about that or about that. Like I put a sponge around that like water leak. I think it's under control. Then it's underneath the floor. Yeah.
I shake my head and I hold that against them. I say, listen, no. I need to know about a small problem before it becomes a big problem. And that's a phrase you should use when you have this discussion with any of your new tenant. Listen, your responsibility, one of your main responsibilities, aside from paying rent to live here and not burning the place down, is to let me know when I need to do something. You have a responsibility to report this to me. The fact that you didn't report it for 6 months isn't because you didn't want to bother me, isn't a bonus for you, isn't an extra good mark for you. It's a mark against you. And I know that that sounds like a jerk thing to say, but you want to be very, very clear. Listen, I have no problem being held to my responsibilities as an owner of a property, as a landlord. But I will hold you to your responsibilities, and I want you to hold me to mine. So please, if there's something wrong, let me know. Give me the opportunity to take care of it.
We got a special guest appearance by Jeb Smith. Jeb Smith's a real estate agent down in Newport Beach in Southern California. Great dude, really, really cool YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. He's got some great insight on real estate. Thanks for stopping by, Jeb. Pulling up social media profiles is a good hack, right? When looking at applicants, and that's for
No
rental
comment.
applicants. That's for, yeah, no comment from Kev. Probably happens every time. It's a great thing, you know. Somebody's applying for a job. That's one of the things about social media is your life is not as private as it used to be 30 years ago. So, you know, what's a funny story that piggybacks onto this, Jeb, is when I was renting one of the problem properties I rented in Alabama back in like 2018 or 19, I looked up my tenant because I had their name on the lease contract, and it was after the fact, so I couldn't go back. But I literally watched YouTube videos of stuff going on in my Alabama property.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah.
I'm sorry, not YouTube, but Facebook videos of stuff that was going on. And I don't remember exactly what it was. I think that there was an outdoor barbecue in the kitchen for like a 4th of July party or something. And I'm like, you're sitting there across the country going, it sounded so good on paper. $750 a month rent. Yeah. And so anyhow, that was my experience with that, and probably good advice. Don't do like I do and look at it after the fact. Look at it as they're applying.
Yeah, but don't forget when it comes to housing, there's all sorts of laws you need to follow when you're making your tenant selection. So if you're going to decline a tenant application, make sure you have legally, a reason for declining it that falls within the legal reasons for declining a tenancy.
Yeah, saying something like, I looked up your social media profile and you looked
a
little too risky for me.
Right. Yeah, you gotta make sure you're using the legitimate way to yes, 100%. Chances are, if they have a social media profile that's giving you that kind of red flags, they probably don't qualify in a variety of other ways too. So
right, yeah, that's a good one. Jay Homeboy, I don't want to miss this one. What is the process of purchasing a house that is for auction on the MLS? Is there still contingency, or is it just highest bidder?
That's a great question. I don't. So we go to foreclosure auctions when they're being auctioned, actually as a foreclosure right there live. I don't know that we've done an auction on an MLS where they just kind of put it up for bid. So I'm honestly, I'm not sure. Probably a whole bunch of different kind of things, contingencies in different ways that they have reserves or things like that. Maybe it has to do with the site or however, wherever it is that they're doing the auction. We've got a tremendous amount of experience going to actually live foreclosure auctions and doing them right there on the spot. And it's basically it's highest bidder at that point.
Okay. Yeah. Check out two guys' take on real estate for more, insight into auction stuff.
We go live sometimes actually showing foreclosure auctions and us bidding on them. I was just live bidding on one last week. We won.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll have to check that stuff out for sure. I don't have a lot of experience with that. I know I got a couple of buyers at like auction.com and whatnot. With those, you got to make sure there's, fees associated with it. And sometimes people don't read the fine print. Read the fine print on the auction stuff for sure.
Or just learn about how to do them live and actually go to the actual original auction when a lot of times those are being re-auctioned until they get a number that they're happy with, I think.
You know what? Like on that, Kev, I got a question of my own now because I think this is something that my, small time investors would ask, right? You and Matt, years of experience, hundreds of properties. You're at this auction, right? With all that experience. Does a guy who's just starting out showing up at that auction, is he at a disadvantage against you when he's
Yeah, big time. So, like I said, everything we learn by making mistakes, and so I can only imagine it's just a matter of time before the newbie out there going to these things is going to step on a landmine that we stepped on once or twice in our past too. So yeah, it can be career ending, and we happen to start at the early of time where the prices were great at that back after the crash. So we could make mistakes and have it not have it end our careers because appreciation kind of bailed us out quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I've watched bidders bid on a property and then say, well, wait a minute, there's somebody in there. And, they're like, we're like, yeah, they're like, well, so like, who gets them out? Like, does the auctioneer like go get them out after this or what? We're like, what? No, they come included with the house. Like, good luck to you. You're dealing with them. If it's a squatter, somebody in there sawing off the copper pipes to feed his habit. I don't know. I mean, it could be the former owner, or it could be a tenant that has no idea why all these people, are out on the lawn. They've been paying their rent this whole time. You're left to sort that stuff out, and that could absolutely jam you up and completely destroy the deal for you before you even got it started.
Yeah, I heard a story locally from a buddy of mine who was at a foreclosure auction, and his partner or somebody just decided, hey, we'll look it up on Google Maps. Property looks great on Google Maps.
Yeah.
What Google Maps didn't show is this property had a fire, right? So it had a ton of fire damage. It's got a smoking deal for 140 grand. It was a smoking deal in more than one way, right? Like it had fire damage. And since I think that specific investor buddy of mine is like, okay, like we drive the local stuff, right? Where we actually can drive by and see the condition of this place, make sure it doesn't have fire damage or something like that, because I don't know about the disclosures and I'm not super familiar with it, but I could imagine you could get yourself into some trouble by just, oh, like surprisingly, I'm the only one that wanted this property in Antelope today, right? Like nobody else is bidding on it.
Right.
I got a good
deal.
Now
you get it. Now you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. Flash a light. Thanks for joining. Another familiar face. How do you deal with slow pay tenants? Cut them loose at renewal, assess the late fee each and every time, remind them, post the 3-day pay or quit on the door.
Well, that's a great question. You might want to make a judgment call to handle them depending on what the scenario is for them. So if it's a newer tenant and maybe they just moved in, we'll say, January, and now you're in March, it's been a couple of months of payments coming in, and they've already shown a track record for being late, 3 days late, one time, 6 days late the next. And now you're on your third time they're there to pay rent. And, you maybe make a call to them and say, hey, listen, Tenant Bob, it's the 8th of the month. We haven't heard from you yet. Is everything okay? Is there some kind of an issue going on? Oh, no, like, did you move out of the property? Are you still living at the property? Oh, well, yeah. Oh, okay. Well, no, the reason I ask is, we haven't heard from you this month with your payment, and you're already a week late. And, we're really concerned because, this is not a great way for you to start off on the right foot with, your new landlord here. So, and you make sure you let them know, and you can do it that way without being like in your face. Like, I can't believe you're late on the rent. Where's my rent? It's the second. You don't have to be aggressive, but you can kind of use that kind of way to communicate with them to help them understand you take this really seriously. Like, but the way to deal with it is like an onion, multiple layers of things. So at the beginning, when you're signing the lease, go over your expectations. Rent's due on the 1st. I have a lot of tenants say, well, listen, what's the grace period? What happens if, the 1st is a whatever, and I can't get it in until the 3rd, or, whatever. Like, is it late if I don't get it to you until I only get my income on the 3rd of the month or the 7th of the month or whatever it might be? Is it late if I get it in on the 8th? Yeah, it was due on the 1st. Is it late on the 8th? I mean, yeah, that's such an easy and obvious question. And, I always tell people, like, you don't have to be a jerk about it, but like, let them know exactly what's expected. If the shoe is on the other foot, and say, listen, if you called me, it's January, middle of January, it's 2 degrees outside and your heat doesn't work. What do you expect me to do? You're going to expect me to hop right into action and fulfill my responsibilities timely. I expect the same out of you. So assessing the late fee each and every time, whatever you do with late fees, you should consistently do with late fees. So either have one or don't have one, apply it or don't. But you can sometimes maybe waive it, as a one-time courtesy, waiving to, and that's a great way where you hit them with a fee for something. And then you say, listen, because you got it in and this is your first time, I'll go ahead and waive it. And you need to set this up as a company policy, so you treat all of your tenants with that. So even if you have 3 units, make sure that applies across the board to everybody. I don't love posting notices on the door the minute they're late. I like to, because first I send out notices. I don't want to go into a property and you want to do things on as much of a systematic basis as you can, and something that's going to be good for. I like being present at the property, but not unnecessarily. So I would just send them it in the mail if you're going to send it out. But I would usually wait. We send ours around 7 to 10 days, and that's basically the beginning of an eviction process. It's a very long. Takes me 6 months to get in front of a judge finally and pay rent, but 7 days after the first happened, that's when we start that process.
Okay,
so tear it up.
Good advice, and it's great to hear from something you're actively involved in day out. I'm curious too. I don't know if you have these like figures tracked and like KPIs around it, but what's your like collection rate on rent? Are you guys getting that 92% of people are paying, or?
We were doing really, really well for a while there, but then, unfortunately 2020 happened. There was just a stupid amount of rental assistance funds and money that became available for people. So it went really, really wacky, where people would rack up a lot of rental arrears because they knew that they would just, apply and get funds wiping out the rental arrears. So whether or not they had any kind of financial need for it, the government, again, I'm in Massachusetts, so you kind of get the idea that they're just throwing money at anybody that asks for it.
California, same. Yeah.
So it got really, really weird. So, we were doing very well. I would say we were doing very, very well overall, because there was just no reason anybody in our state, there was just no reason, I might get flamed for this, but there's just no reason anybody should be losing their home in Massachusetts for non-payment of rent, because they were throwing money at everybody and many, many people that absolutely had no need of it whatsoever. And so our rent collection was amazingly on point. It just might be, depending on how you're looking at it, it might be 1 month where a whole bunch of people weren't paying because they needed to get into being qualified for needing rent relief. But right now, as that's fading away, a lot of it has faded away. We're getting people now who aren't used to having actually pay their way again, and we're trying to get them reconfigured to learning that you have to actually pay.
Right. Yeah, I know it's probably a longer conversation, but yeah, how do you get people from rental assistance and the unemployment assistance, unemployment bonus, all the things that California was doing? Like, how do you wean people off of that,
right?
And get them back to what is normally the case, where you work, you get paid, and then you pay for your rent and food. Anyhow, like I could go down too long of a rabbit hole. So,
but having some wherewithal to be able to endure those kind of things, a few months of people being behind temporarily is always a good idea if you have the ability to run your properties without a little bit of income coming in.
For sure. All right, Jason Garcia, thanks for the consistent content. Appreciate you watching, Jason. Thought about reaching out regarding Fannie and Freddie commercial down payment, but not familiar with the ins and outs. I personally, as a residential mortgage broker, I'm all 1 to 4. So I work with plenty of investors, but like we talked about earlier, that's house hacking, or buying a duplex, living in one side, renting out the other, buying a 4 unit. 5 and above, for anybody who's unfamiliar, becomes commercial. Fannie and Freddie also have commercial products. I don't know how much knowledge you have, Kev, but I would guess that it's more than me as far as getting commercial financing. Anything you have to add to the conversation for Jason as far as the ins and outs of commercial financing?
Probably not a ton. I'm not the expert in terms of that. That's actually, you're way more of an expert than I am on this stuff. But developing good relationships with banks, local banks are great. That will help you. That will learn about who you are and feel comfortable. Doing any kind of loans with you is probably a really, really big thing that people overlook.
Yeah. I think the relationship with banks is really important. And one thing I will add, Jason, is I do know that when you're qualifying for a residential mortgage, your job pays you $7,500 a month, and the bank's looking at your credit score, your job, and really that debt to income ratio is more based on you personally. You start to get into 10 unit, 12 unit, 15, 20. They're going to look at how the asset performs, so that thing spits off X number of dollars in rent minus expenses. And it's more of an analyzing the asset and how much that generates income wise versus the person. On the personal side, you can get into a kind of a combination where you buy a 4 unit and you're using your personal income plus the rents from the 4 units to qualify for that. But that's the big difference. You can go 5 unit and above and talk to a commercial lender who's going to be able to really dive more deep into that. Your follow-up FHA house hack is definitely my lane, right? Because you can buy with FHA and put 3.5% down. It's got to be owner occupied, but the cool part about owner occupied 4-unit is you've got 3 other units to rent out. And so there's a bunch of clients that I've worked with. There's a bunch of investors across the country that I've spoken with. It's a really good way to get yourself started in real estate. If you don't necessarily mind sharing a building with 3 other households, right?
Basically.
Yeah, exactly. You can buy something for $500,000, put 3.5% down, and with closing costs and everything, usually you're 20 or 25 grand total cash out of pocket. You own essentially your owner occupied residence and 3 others. If you get into a good deal, generally those other 3 are going to pay for your living expenses, which it's cool to live for free. And then over time, as rents go up, you move out, you rent that 4th unit, you got something that's kicking off $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month. It's a great way to get started, and you get to buy your first primary and 3 rental properties all in one with 3.5% down. It's pretty good. One thing I would warn against, because it's not going to be like this everywhere in the country, but in California, as prices go up, FHA has a self-sustainability rule where the rents need to cover the PITI, and you basically take 75% of those 3 other units. So for quick math for people, if you got $1,000 per door and you've got 3 doors that are being rented because you're living in one, 75% of the 3,000 is $2,250. Your principal, interest, tax, insurance can't be more than that $2,250. It's got to be self-sustaining. That's an issue that we've run into in California quite a bit as prices have gone up. But yeah, it's a cool thing to look into for anybody who's wanting to do that.
I that's one of the things people ask us all the time. If we could start this over again, that's exactly how I would tell them I would have started. I had that idea when I was just out of college, where you're in college and you're after college, you're probably single, probably living with your buddies as an apartment and as roommates anyway. Might as well be living in one of your apartments and renting it out to your friends renting above you and stuff. And would have been a great way to get started.
Yeah, I mean, I know some guys that have hit home runs where they've got 4 2-bedrooms. They're living in one. They're renting out the other bedroom, and they're renting out the other 3 units. And they might collect $4,800 a month. Their payment's $3,500. They're already cash flowing on top of living for free. Yeah. When they move out, it's even better. So cool, man. I know we're running short on time. I got some appointments, and I don't want to keep you too long, Kev. I appreciate the heck out of your time.
Not a problem at all.
Quick one for the Ramirez real estate team. Does your bank offer real estate financing in North Carolina? We do, and I'm going to tell you how to connect with us the best way. I got a link here somewhere. It's greatmortgagebroker.com. Go to greatmortgagebroker.com, fill out the quick form, connect you with our team in North Carolina. They'll be in touch quickly, and happy to help. So thanks for asking that. Is there, besides the YouTube, 2 Guys Take on Real Estate, or TikTok, anywhere folks to look you up, check you out?
We have Facebook and Instagram, all with the same name. We're live on Instagram and TikTok just all the time. You never know when you're going to see us pop on there. It could be in the middle of a random tenant dispute outside of one of our properties. It could be us kicking out a squatter or foreclosure auction, or doing a walkthrough of a property we're acquiring. And we can talk about how we're analyzing the property to decide if we want to buy it or not. We show literally a lot of stuff live and out in the field. It's crazy.
Real estate, education, and comedy all in one. Yeah. Sign me up, bro. I'm gonna check out 2 Guys Take on Real Estate on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. I appreciate your time, Kev. Thanks for joining, man.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.